Today on our podcast, we're going to discuss penile length. What is most satisfying? Now, when it comes to penile length, we have to consider anatomy, meaning if you're having intercourse with a female and the vaginal space, the vault, we say, is only so long, let's say 6 inches, right, until you hit the uterus or the cervix, part of the uterus. Obviously, something beyond 6 inches in length while having intercourse might be difficult or painful, right? It might be too sensitive for that particular woman. So length might sound great, right? I tell men, I don't care if you're 2 miles long, it's really the girth that stimulates, right? We'll have another discussion on girth. However, when it comes to length, it's very important to recognize that the vaginal vault is only so long, okay? Some could maybe accept a longer length, perhaps 8 or 9 inches, right? We really don't know. However, when you're having intercourse, the main stimulation is not 9 inches deep into the vaginal vault or close to the cervix, right? It's mostly in the front 3 to 4 inches of the vaginal space, because the anatomy shows us that the clitoral nerves, generally not involved with intercourse, right? The clitoral nerves will actually migrate and go into the walls of the vaginal space. Now, what happens in this case is that you have the penile shaft entering into the vaginal vault, and it stimulates the first 3 or 4 inches of that heavily dense clitoral nerve population, right? So the question is, if 3 or 4 inches is going to do it, okay, why do we need 9? Why do we need 9 inches? And I'm going to briefly talk about that situation. Unfortunately, in these days, we have a lot of porn, right? We have a lot of pornography. Generally, the men who do pornography are usually larger, right, or longer. So men that watch pornography might see a guy 8 inches long, 9 inches, 10 inches long. And while they're having intercourse, the females are what? They're screaming, right? It seems like they're having so much pleasure. So in a man's mind, if I can't be 8, 9, or 10 inches in length, I can never achieve that type of orgasm, okay? Now, I have performed my procedure on some of these porn stars, okay? And let me tell you, I've interviewed them, and what the result of that interview would shock you. And I would say to them, for example, I say, John, do the women like your 10-inch long penis, right? Now, I kind of know the answer. Okay, but I let them tell me. They said, no, absolutely not. They don't like a 10-inch long penis because it hurts them a lot, but they're very good actors. That's what I hear from them, okay? Now imagine that for a second. This woman is having intercourse with a very long penis. She's making it sound like it's the most wonderful experience in the world, but yet she's in pain while she's doing it. See, that's a deception, and that's wrong. We have a mental image of that as perfection, right? A man sees that, that's what he wants. So what I do, I have to re-educate patients on length and say, look, length is not the answer. It's the girth. Now, if you're 3 inches long, that's different. Okay, I'm talking about if you're average or above, really I would push you to do really the girth to help with stimulation. Okay, but when it comes to length, okay, there's only so far you can go, and most women do not want to have a 9-inch length into their vaginal space because it hurts. In fact, women can bleed from that. They can actually damage the cervix and the internal compartments there. So my suggestion is to really understand the anatomy. When you understand the anatomy, you'll see that penile length is nowhere near as important as the girth itself, okay? Because it's the girth that's going to stimulate the vaginal walls where all of those nerves are, okay? Imagine being very, very skinny, right? The penile shaft being very thin. And now, let's say you're 12 inches long. Okay, you guys say, well, you're 12 inches long. That has to satisfy. But actually, there'll be probably zero satisfaction. Because without that girth, it doesn't, I kid around with my patients. I say, I don't care if you're 12 miles long. It doesn't matter. You're not going to stimulate those nerves very well. Okay? So the bottom line is, depending on your partner, some partners, they say, yeah, I like 8 inches because they like to grab something bigger, and that's okay, right? But we're focusing here on intercourse and anatomy involved, right? The anatomy. So I would say that to summarize this here, that if you're about 6 inches in length, okay, that will satisfy most women, right? The only thing I would add to that is that my recommendation is really it's the girth that will stimulate the vaginal canal. So that's something that you might want to consider.